Have you ever been in the darkest state of your life, only to have others laugh at you for it? I used to believe that I could share everything with my best friend, even my secret battles with depression. But instead of understanding, what did I get? A string of sarcasm, jokes, and even mocking messages that he sent to his mutual group of friends, just for entertainment. I was silent. I swallowed my tears. But life has a strange way of putting things right. Because now, the person who once laughed at my pain was crying out, begging me for help. And you know what? I'm not sure I have the compassion to respond. Welcome to Judgy Tales, where you don't just listen to shocking real-life stories, you also get to be the final judge. We bring you dramatic stories, moral dilemmas, unexpected twists, and most of all, the chance to put yourself in the shoes of the judge. In today's video, you'll hear a story of fake friendships, disregard for mental health, and a cold, heartbreaking revenge. A man struggles with depression only to have his self-esteem undermined and trampled by the person closest to him. But then, the wheels of life turn, when the very person who mocked him faces a crisis of the utmost magnitude and turns to him for help. What would you do if you were the person in this story? Forgive them to be a better person? Or turn your back on them like they did to you? Balance scale, listen carefully, judge fairly, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section. If you love deep stories, twists and turns that make you unable to stop thinking, then click subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any trials from Judgy Tales. Performing arts. Today's story is not only a gleeful revenge, but also a reminder of the power and fragility of mental health. Because sometimes the person you laugh at today might be the only person you need tomorrow. I grew up in a typical suburban American family, peaceful on the outside, but filled with unspoken voids on the inside. My parents were traditionalists who never believed in putting emotions on the table. In my house, if you were sad, you hid it. If you were scared, you smiled. And if you showed any signs of depression, it was a sign of weakness. As I grew older, I learned to keep quiet. I built a strong shell, but inside I was crumbling little by little. The only person I ever felt like I could really confide in was Ethan. We met freshman year of college. We both loved indie music, classic horror movies, and long nights talking about everything. Ethan was the kind of friend everyone thought was good, funny, smart, helpful, and always had a word of wisdom for every situation. He made me feel safe, unjudged, or so I thought. Our friendship lasted almost a decade. After college, I pursued a freelance writing career while Ethan worked in marketing for a small fashion company. Adult life caught up with us like everyone else. Bills, work stress, broken relationships, and a sense of drifting aimlessly in a world of expectations. But while Ethan knew how to make people think he was in control, I was not. Depression began to creep in more clearly after a serious breakup with my long-term girlfriend. Insomnia, loss of appetite, panic attacks in the middle of the night. I was losing myself. At that moment, I decided to open up to Ethan, the person I trusted the most. I told him everything. The constant tired thoughts, the feeling of being numb to life, the nights when I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I should continue to exist. Ethan nodded, said a few comforting words like, "Cheer up, everything will be okay," and quickly changed the subject. I felt a little disappointed, but I still thought he just didn't know how to handle this serious matter. But things started to go further when I found out what Ethan had been saying behind my back. At a gathering of old friends, I accidentally read a text message on a mutual friend's phone. A text from Ethan, mocking me for being a drama king, just looking for attention, crying like the main character in a Netflix sad movie. Those words rubbed salt into a wound I was trying to heal. I felt betrayed to the core. The person I trusted the most was making fun of my pain, as if it were some kind of performance to gain sympathy. Not only that, Ethan also shared the details of my private conversations with the whole group, with mocking expressions as if he were telling a joke during lunch. One of my friends said to me, "He said you're blaming your depression for not doing anything with your life." I couldn't believe it. I didn't go crazy. I didn't make a scene. I didn't destroy Ethan outright, even though I could have. Instead, I backed away. I cut off contact with the group, deleted Ethan's number, and focused all my energy on healing. I started therapy. I learned about mental health, learned to set boundaries, learned to forgive myself for trusting the wrong person. Slowly I came back, not stronger but more true to myself. About a year later, when I had settled into a writing career, had a few big clients, and was about to buy my first apartment, Ethan reappeared. Not via friendly text, but as a 2 a.m. call from an unknown number, with a shaky, almost panicked voice. It was Ethan, and he was falling apart. The company he worked for had downsized. His girlfriend had just left him after 3 years. He was disoriented, unable to sleep, speaking incoherent sentences about seeing no reason to continue. I sat in the dark, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the same words I'd said a year ago, now spoken by the person who'd laughed at me. I wish I could say I felt sorry, wanted to run over and help like an old friend. But in reality, I felt empty. I just thought, this is what you put me through, and now you come asking for understanding. The issue here isn't punishment. It's the realization that when people laugh at someone else's pain, they're gambling with something very fragile. Trust. And once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild. Ethan didn't just destroy a friendship. He tore apart a space I thought was safe, a place where I could be honest without being judged. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. Forgive. Or quietly move on. But one thing is certain. When you mock the emotional pain of others, be prepared for the moment when you become the one who needs saving. And when that happens, don't be surprised if no one reaches out. I used to think the worst part of depression was feeling lonely. But no, worse than being lonely is when you think you're not alone, that you have someone, and then realize that person is just standing there watching you fall apart. Ethan was that person. And worst of all, I didn't see it coming until it was too late. We were like brothers. Conversations that lasted until dawn, personal breakdowns, secrets no one else ever heard. Ethan knew about my pain. He knew I'd lost my mother at 16. He knew I'd attempted suicide at 22. He knew I was battling the invisible monster called depression. And I trusted him. Not the usual kind of trust. Deep trust. The kind that makes you think, if I fall apart, this person will catch me. I was wrong. Conflict does not start with a specific event. There is no obvious last straw. It is like a leak of toxic gas in a closed room. First, you don't notice it. You laugh, you talk, you live. Then you cough, you faint, and then you realize you are poisoned with no way out. Ethan started cracking jokes about my illness at gatherings. At first, it was light. Just another day where Josh feels like the world is falling apart. People laughed. I laughed too because I didn't want to be jokeless. But then it escalated. Josh has the mood swings of a premenopausal woman. Does he need a hug or more sleeping pills? And the one that made me want to punch him in the face. Josh doesn't need a job, he just needs a blanket and fake rain. Not only that, Ethan began using my story as a social tool. At parties, in his group of friends, even with his co-workers, I became a kind of interesting story. I have a friend who suffers from depression, and he told me that sometimes he wakes up and doesn't know why he's alive. Can you believe it? I told him, try that new Starbucks and you'll see that life is worth living. Laugh again. Every time I hear these things, it feels like someone is peeling my skin off in public and holding it up as a trophy. Kept quiet. Not because I didn't know how to fight back, but because I was trying to believe Ethan was just kidding. That maybe he didn't realize he was hurting me. I beat myself up, wondering if I was being too sensitive. But then I realized, a true friend doesn't make you examine your own feelings. One day, I had an important therapy session after a series of breakdowns. My therapist told me that I needed to start eliminating the things that were making me worse. I walked out of the room with a clear resolution. I was going to talk to Ethan once and for all. I arranged to meet him at a coffee shop where we had spent hours talking about philosophy, movies, and future plans. But this time there were no smiles. I told Ethan that I felt hurt, that the jokes made me feel betrayed, that he had shared my personal story as a laughingstock. His response: smirk and a shrug. You're being too serious. I was just keeping it light. Don't tell me you're getting triggered by a joke. Trigger. The word hit me like a slap. People use the word trigger when someone is truly triggered by trauma. Ethan used it as if I were a flaky joke, a wandering emotional bomb. He saw me not as a friend in need of respect, but as a pathetic sidekick in his personal sitcom. I couldn't pretend anymore. I stood up and told him we weren't friends anymore. He laughed. Oh, come on, Josh, stop making the movie. Okay, I won't tell you anymore. End of story, okay? I looked at him and said, you've never been a listener. You've just been waiting for your turn to tell the story. Leaving the bar that day, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my back. But at the same time I felt empty. Ethan was more than just a friend. He had been a witness to my youth, to the times I cried in despair, to the tearful stories I couldn't tell anyone else. And now he was the cause of new pain. I blocked Ethan on every platform. Not to punish him, but to protect myself. And I thought that was the end of it. But then a month later I got an email from a mutual friend, Sarah, with a link to Ethan's new podcast. Out of curiosity I clicked. And I wish I hadn't. In that podcast, Ethan had a personal segment where he told the story of an old friend with a serious mental illness, who berated him for a few harmless jokes. He called me the epitome of modern weakness, a manipulator of pity, and climaxed. If he really wanted to die, he would have done it. The suicide threat was just a ploy to keep his friends around. I stopped listening at that moment. I was shaking, not with anger, but with fear. Fear that the words would spread. Fear that people would see depression through the lens Ethan had constructed. An exaggeration, a power play, a social card. That's when I decided to tell my story. Not for revenge. Not for pity. But to reclaim my voice. I'm not a happy story. I'm not a modern-day wimp. I'm a survivor. And I know there are millions of people out there just like me. People who have been hurt by people they called friends. The problem wasn't that Ethan was joking. It was that he never apologized. That he didn't acknowledge that he was wrong. He took my trust and used it as a stage. He made me the villain in a story where I was the victim. And then, as fate would have it, one night he called me. Shaking. Panicking. Sobbing. He said he didn't know what to do anymore. He lost his job. His girlfriend left. His family turned their backs on him. He couldn't sleep. And he started thinking about ending it. Hearing those words I could barely breathe. Because they were the same words I had said to him, in tears, in despair. And he had laughed. Now he was saying them again with the same cracking sound, but this time from the very depths of hell he had said did not exist. This is no longer a story of two friends arguing. This is a story of humanity, betrayal, and the price of ignoring emotional pain. Ethan laughed at depression. Now depression is laughing at him. But I don't laugh. I just stay silent, hold my phone, and ask myself, do I still have a duty to save the person who pushed me to rock bottom? And then I realized the most painful thing was not being humiliated by Ethan in front of millions of people, but realizing that everyone around me had seen the video. And no one said anything. They watched. They shared. They laughed. Some even told me, don't take it personally, you should take a joke. And it was there that I saw something even more terrifying than public ridicule. Collective insensitivity. I remember walking down the hall of my dorm, a group of guys gathered around, playing Ethan's imitation of me crying, replaying, I don't want to live anymore, but life keeps making me breathe. They were laughing so hard they choked up. One of them yelled, Hey Josh, do that face again. I looked at them saying nothing. Just standing there. One tapped me on the shoulder like a friend patting me on the back and whispered, You know it's a joke, right? But I didn't know. I really didn't know what a joke was when my panic attack became the most popular remix of the week on TikTok. Ethan didn't do it all by himself. He was just the leader. The rest were the silent passengers who clapped. The ones who didn't directly hold the knife, but still filmed the clip. The ones who didn't curse, but still liked and tagged their friends. And the saddest part, my relatives, my friends, my teachers, they chose to stay silent. Or worse, they chose to stay out of it, protecting their reputations by not getting involved in an online drama. I started getting kicked out of study groups. No one said why. A few professors suddenly became cold. Someone emailed me privately to take a semester off to get my mind right. They didn't say because of that video. But I knew. Everyone knew. That video didn't just kill me online, it killed me in the real world. At the coffee shop near campus, the staff whispered, "You're that depressed guy from the internet, right?" Not my name. Not Josh. Just depressed guy. Ethan didn't just create content. He created a new identity for me without my permission. I was no longer entitled to be a junior in English. I was no longer the good son my mother had always been proud of. I was just a living meme, a digital cry looped over and over again in the machine of algorithms. I thought the twist was Ethan getting cancelled. But the bigger twist was that I, the victim, got cancelled first. While Ethan continued to take on endorsements, go on comedy tours and teach voice influencer courses, I had to drop out of school, transfer schools, and cut ties with almost all of my old friends. Every time I tried to apply for a job, HR was very interested. Until they realized I was that guy in the video. My mother cried when she saw me shave my head and tattoo. "I am more than a clip" on my wrist. She didn't understand how I fought to stay human. Not because of Ethan, but because I feared I was becoming exactly what Ethan had labeled me. A lifelong victim. I started keeping a diary every day as a way to hold on to reality. One day I wrote, "I still exist. I am not a broken audio track." Another day I wrote just one word. Pain. Then one day, after taking my medication, I wrote, "I'm afraid that if I don't forgive, I will die in the role Ethan created for me. But I was also afraid that if I forgive, no one will be held accountable." Then a text message came from Ethan. I was in therapy. It was short. "I want to see you." Not because of the clip. Just because I think I owe you more than an apology. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know which version of me I should reply to. Josh, the one who had fallen apart. Or Josh, the one who was trying to get back up. I texted my therapist. "Should I see him?" He wrote back, "You won't meet the person who hurt you. You'll meet yourself. A stronger version. And you won't let him control you again." The meeting took place at a mental health center where Ethan was in a recovery program. He walked into the room, noticeably thinner. His eyes devoid of the usual contempt. I sat across from him, my heart pounding. Ethan didn't apologize right away. He just sat there, looked at me, and then pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "I wrote this over the course of 2 weeks. Every word is true." I unfolded the paper. I began to read. Each line was a stab back at him. I chose laughter over truth. I chose interaction over kindness. I turned other people's pain into my brand. And now, no one wants to hear what I really have to say. I looked at him. Ethan was crying. Not a dramatic cry, but a small cry, like someone peeling off a mask after years of wearing it. I didn't say, "I forgive you." I just said, "I hope you won't turn your own pain into another story to make money." Ethan nodded. I left the room without looking back. I didn't sleep that night. But for the first time in years, I didn't dream of laughter echoing through the looping clips. I only heard a deep sigh from myself, a sigh of survival. I was no longer at my old school, but the aftershocks of Hurricane Ethan had not faded as I had hoped. At my new school, although no one recognized me as the boy in the video, I still lived in constant fear of being found out. I refused to participate in class presentations, refused to let anyone follow me on social media, and even deleted all traces of myself on Reddit, Facebook, and Instagram, as if I were running away from my own life. There were nights when I sat in front of the screen, thinking about writing a post about saying it all, but then I deleted it because I was afraid of being called the one who exploits pain to gain views. That title originally belonged to Ethan, but now it was like a ghost, waiting to jump to me if I opened my mouth. And it was in that silence that I realized another twist. The punishment of the victim did not come from the perpetrator, but from a society that always needed someone to bear the label of weakness, to cover up their own indifference. Every time I see Ethan pop up on a podcast, with his familiar deep voice and fresh contrition, I wonder, how quickly will people forgive him? And what about me? Am I being petty for not being able to forget? Or am I just another one of the people left behind, while the perpetrator finds a way to get more likes from his own manufactured apology? I tried dating once. She was nice, sweet, smart, and seemed genuinely interested. But when one of her friends scrolled through TikTok and asked, "Hey, is your boyfriend that crybaby?" I saw the color change in her eyes. Not because she hated me, but because she was afraid of being labeled as the girlfriend of that weakling. Understood. Backed out. Not because I didn't like her, but because I couldn't bear to see someone else get dragged into this nightmare because of me. And then I sat alone in the middle of the night, repeating a single question. How long until I can be a normal person? And just then, something unexpected happened. An online newspaper specializing in analyzing media influence published an article, "When Content Kills Real People," behind a million-view clip. The article did not mention my name, but it clearly described every detail of my experience. A student ridiculed for sharing his mental health problems. A person turned into an international laughingstock. Person disappeared from social media. A person without a chance to argue. And that article sparked something I thought would never happen. Public opinion began to ask the opposite question. Have we gone too far? Are we really good people for abetting such cruel jokes? Is Ethan truly repentant, or is this just rebranding? A prominent university communications professor even held a conference called, "When Content is a Weapon, the Victim Has No Right to Fight Back." And for the first time I was invited to speak. Not as a victim, but as a survivor. I declined the first time. The second time I accepted, but only on one condition. Don't mention Ethan's name. Don't show old clips. Just talk about the system, about how the audience, social media, the media, were complicit. I didn't cry during that talk. I just told him, very slowly, very clearly, that I wanted to die. That I lost my identity. That I didn't hate Ethan anymore, because I understood that Ethan was just a byproduct of a larger machine. A machine that consumes drama, laughs at weakness, and calls it interesting content. I don't accept applause. I don't want it. I want one thing. For the audience to be uncomfortable. To think. To ask themselves, have I ever shared something that made someone want to die? And from that day on, things began to change. Not in a big way. Not with a tragic drama. Just a few emails, no name, no address. Someone wrote, "I laughed at that clip. I'm sorry." Someone else wrote, "You made me dare to see a therapist for the first time." And I started writing again. But not about Ethan. I wrote about the system. About how pain can become a market. About how those with microphones can define others with an edit. About how survival doesn't mean being heard. And about hope. That one day, victims will be able to tell their own stories without having to be someone else's content. Ethan disappeared from the internet for a while. There were rumors that he was in rehab. There were rumors that he started a mental health charity, but no one confirmed it. I didn't care. Because for me, this story wasn't about him anymore. It was about how I reclaimed ownership of my voice. And if you're listening, I just want to say one last thing. Remember, behind every funny video there could be someone trying not to kill themselves. And if you're not sure it's going to hurt someone, don't share it. Don't like it. Don't laugh. They don't deserve to die because of your silence. I knew I couldn't heal by turning away. There were things that needed to be faced. And this time I wasn't going to just walk away like before. The years of him laughing at my pain, the cruel jokes about antidepressants, about me being weak or lazy, all of that would have to be paid back. Not with hatred, but with justice. With action. With truth. By showing the world who's truly weak when the spotlight is on them. The moment I stood there watching him cry, shaking in the council chamber, begging me not to ruin everything, I didn't feel the satisfaction of a vengeful person. Felt right. Not that I was evil. I was just giving back exactly what he had sown. But to get to that point I had to come up with a plan. Not just clever but one that no one could use against me. And I'll tell you, step by step, stroke by stroke, I cut the strings he had been pulling for years. After he emailed me begging for help after being fired from his new company. The company he once boasted about as his dream job, I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed time. I wanted to see what he was trying to do, whether he was truly sorry, or simply trying to cling to his once vulnerable ex to take advantage of him again. And just as I expected, he didn't change. After a few more begging emails, he started texting my old friends, even my sister, saying I was angry, and just need someone to speak for me and I'll forgive. Forgive. The way he still treated everything like a game disgusted me. I started collecting. Not by setting traps but by digging into the past. The emails he'd sent, mocking me for having an anxiety disorder. The recorded messages where he'd yelled at me for failing to meet a simple deadline. The anonymous posts he'd made online, which I'd discovered from a matching IP address, about his drug-slinging ex-girlfriend. I filed them all away, cataloged them, timestamped them, even checked the metadata of each file. Because if I was going to strike back, I wanted it to be unassailable. Then I heard from a friend that he was applying to a non-profit organization that had a rigorous character screening process. They evaluated candidates not only on their resumes but also on their values, their attitude toward the community, their empathy for minorities and people with mental health issues. I knew the time was right. I did not write a revenge report. I wrote a professional report, with evidence, facts, links, and attachments. I did not make up a single word. I simply stated what he had said, done, and written. I simply stated how I had been hurt by someone who had always belittled mental illness, ridiculed therapy, and viewed people with mental health problems as a burden. And I signed my name. I didn't mean to go public. But maybe the organization did the right thing. They called me, not to interrogate me but to thank me. They said his case was in the final round. And if I didn't speak up, they might have made the wrong choice. I hung up not feeling happy, just relieved. As relieved as the first time I could breathe after years of him choking my belief in myself. A week later I got an email from him. No long words, no jokes. Just one sentence. Why did you do that? And it was the first time he called me baby since the breakup. No more contempt, no more cruel words. Just a question. But for me it was a question that came too late. I didn't reply. But I knew he wouldn't stop. And sure enough, a few days later I saw an anonymous comment under my post about mental health, saying, "Some people just pretend to be pitied." I followed up and found that the registered email address was the same as his old account. So he hadn't learned anything. So I had work to do. I saw a lawyer. I wasn't planning on suing. I just wanted to know what my rights were if I wanted to make him stop. My lawyer said I could definitely get a restraining order if I had more evidence of harassment. So I set up an alert system to monitor my online interactions. Every time he created a new account and tried to contact me, I had a record. His every move was now recorded, not for revenge, but for self-protection. A month later, I heard that he had lost 3 different job opportunities. One of them was because a former female employee who worked under him filed a complaint about his bullying behavior. Maybe my speaking up had a domino effect. Maybe when one person dares to speak up, others will feel safe to speak up. I am not a hero. I am just a person who has been hurt and now does not want anyone else to feel the pain I did. And then the thing I least expected happened. He asked to see me. Not via text, but a handwritten letter. Written in ink, shaky, and almost 3 pages long. In the letter, he told me about his depression after losing his job. How his family turned their backs on him because they were tired of his personality. How he had thought about killing himself, but then didn't have the courage. He said he had no friends, no place to go. And he begged for a chance to apologize in person. I finished reading. Cried. But not because I felt sorry for him. Because I understood that depression spares no one. Even those who have trampled on others. I didn't see him. But I wrote him a letter. Not forgiveness. Not curses, but a warning. Do you understand now? What you feel now? The isolation, the brokenness, the feeling that no one believes in you, is what I lived with all those years when you called me weak. If you want to change, start by facing yourself. Not me. I don't know if he read it. I don't know if he changed. But I do know that my journey has ended. Not with a bang, but with an awakening. I am no longer the girl who feared the contemptuous gaze of her lover. I am a woman who has learned to stand up for herself and show others that there is nothing shameful about being weak. But torturing the weak is unforgivable. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been belittled for being weak, if you've ever been mocked for trying to survive with a broken mental health, remember, you're not alone. And if you need a place to feel heard, to feel seen, this is it. This is Judgy Tales. Here we don't just tell stories. We pass judgment. And sometimes, that judgment is to bring justice to souls who have been pushed into darkness. There was a moment I will never forget. Not when he laughed at my pain. Not when I gathered evidence to fight back, not when he wrote the letter in a trembling hand admitting he was falling apart. But the moment I stood in front of the mirror, looked straight into my own eyes after years of hiding and whispered, I am not the same person anymore. In those eyes, there was no longer the panic of the girl who was once ridiculed for taking medication. No longer the confused look of being seen as weak. No longer the self-consciousness that bled with every breath because she had lived in the shadow of someone who always denied the pain of others. Instead, there were the eyes of someone who had stood up, not just to survive, but to draw a line for herself, and for those who had never been heard. My story, at the end of the day, is not one of glorious revenge. It is a journey, of healing, of confronting, of reclaiming the voice that was once taken away from me. Because if you have ever been in a relationship where your vulnerability was used as a weapon against you, you know that silence is never the answer. Patience does not change people. And love should not be used to justify insulting, manipulating, and denying someone their true feelings. I used to think I needed to forgive in order to move on. But then I realized, forgiveness is not a gift I owe anyone. Forgiveness is a gift I give myself when I am ready. And more importantly, sometimes true forgiveness is not about hugging the person who hurt you, but about ending it, walking away, and never looking back. I don't need him to change to feel whole. I don't need an apology to move on. The only thing I need is to know that I did the right thing. Not because I want to punish someone, but because I want to save myself. And with every step I take out of the darkness, I understand something more. Mental health is not a luxury, nor an excuse. It is survival. It determines whether you can get out of bed in the morning, eat a meal without feeling guilty, talk to a friend without worrying that you are disturbing them. And yet for so long society has taken it for granted. How many people like me have had to force themselves to look okay, only to collapse in silence? How many have had to hide their prescriptions, hide their therapy sessions, for fear of being seen as crazy, weak, needing attention? And how many, like my ex, have contributed to that fear? But not everyone is evil at heart. I understand that. Sometimes people hurt others because they themselves were never taught empathy. They grew up in an environment where strength is associated with silence, where men don't cry, where adults have to go through things alone. But that's not an excuse. Because when you know you're hurting someone and you continue to do it, you're no longer a victim of your circumstances. You're the perpetrator. And it is here, in this place where the truth is distorted by prejudice, where the weakest voices are pushed to the bottom, that we need each other. We need a community where pain is not laughed at, where tears are not seen as weakness, where one can say, I'm not okay without being turned away. That is why I share this story. Not to put anyone down, but to lift up those whose heads are down. Not to expose one person, but to pave the way for the thousands who suffer in silence. Not to be the center of attention, but to turn my personal experience into a light for others to find their way. Maybe you're listening to this and thinking, I've been there. Maybe you've never told anyone that you're taking medication. That you've ever wondered if you're worth living. That you've ever loved someone who made you doubt yourself. If so, I want you to know I see you. Believe in you. And I'm here to say, you have the right to be who you are without apologizing for it. Maybe you've made a joke about depression. Maybe you've thought, just cheer up and it'll go away. Maybe you've laughed when someone said they had social anxiety. If so, I don't hate you. But I hope you stop. I hope you think again. Because sometimes, your seemingly innocuous remark can be the last straw for someone on the edge. And empathy is never a bad thing. Even if you've never felt what they're feeling. I don't wish anyone pain to understand others. I just wish each of us could slow down a little, listen a little, and choose kindness over prejudice. Because you never know what the person sitting next to you, in the cafe, on the train, in the office, is fighting inside. A smile, a sincere greeting can sometimes save a soul. And the man in this story, I don't know what's become of him. Maybe he's learned something. Maybe he's still struggling. But I don't care anymore. Because this story, in the end, isn't about him. It's about me. And people like me. People who were once overlooked, but learned to stand up. People who were once defined by others, but now write their own stories. And if you're on your healing journey, I want you to know. There is no set timeline. No one is telling you to hurry up. Every step you take, no matter how small, deserves recognition. Whether you've just started talking about your fears, or you've found the courage to seek help. You're doing great. And there's no shame in trying. This is why Judgy Tales exists. Not just to tell dramatic stories, but to look at what others shy away from. To say what many are afraid to say. To judge. Not with blind judgment, but with fairness, with compassion, and with the hope that one day, we will live in a world where mental health is as valued as physical health. So if today's story made you think, made you see yourself in it, share it. Not just to spread the word, but to create a conversation. Tell someone you've been through something similar. Ask a friend how they're really feeling. Be the person you needed when you were at rock bottom. And if you're at rock bottom, let me be the one to tell you, you're not alone. You deserve love. And you deserve a life where you don't have to be afraid to hide what you're struggling with. I walked through the darkness. Not because I was stronger than anyone else, but because I didn't want to continue living a life ruled by fear. Now I tell my story. Not to get pity, but to give hope. Not to expose anyone, but to point out what's right and what's wrong. Not to end up in a YouTube clip, but to start a movement, where everyone has the right to say, I'm trying. And that's enough. You've listened. Now it's your turn to judge. Did this story resonate with you? Did it make you think about how you treat others and yourself? Leave your thoughts below. And if you believe stories like this need to be told more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another twist ending from Judgy Tales.